Record. Hello, my name is Matt Richardson. I'm the Director of Intelligence and Investigations with the Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative. I am also a professor at Loyalist College, where I teach topics that include online safety and using social media and the internet responsibly. And today I am very grateful to have the opportunity to support our military community by sharing with you pro tips thoughtfully compiled by a loving and caring father himself. And everything I'm going to share with you today is advice that I've learned from over 500 hours in the field, helping research online predators, child abusers, and sex traffickers. So the advice that I give you is current and it's from the field. It's hard earned. That said, again, I deliver this with the love and care of a father, parent to parent. I'd like to actually give my colleague and friend Janie an opportunity to introduce herself now. Live.
Hi, and I'm Janie Pichette. I am on the mental health team at the Trenton Military Family Resource Center. My role is as our francophone counselor, as well as our women's services coordinator. So primarily my role is to offer counseling to the family members of our active service members and veterans. However, programming and webinars are also part of my role, and we are very happy and lucky to have invited Matt Richardson to do some presentations for us here at the MFRC focused on internet safety. And I'm very excited to be doing this with you, Matt. In the fall, we completed a live version, and I'm excited that we are now doing this shorter, more brief recorded version that will be available on demand to our community. I also wanted to ask, will it be possible to have the slides available at request, Matt, from our longer presentation in the fall?
Well, thanks for, I meant to mention, Janie, thank you for mentioning. The slides will be provided for those that view this video. So today will be very conversational. Anyone wishing to view the screens where there's items we discussed that have visuals to them, they will be made available. You will be able to reference those.
Wonderful, fantastic. So don't hesitate to give us a call or send us an email here at the MFRC if you'd like any assistance in getting access to those. Hopefully when we figure out how to set this video up online, we'll be able to set up a link for you. But if ever there's an issue there, then just get a hold of us. I know we're hoping to keep this as a concise information-based discussion. So I'll just jump right in, Matt, and ask you, what is that core internet safety information that you think our community ought to be aware of?
Well, Janie, it's like many things as parents. We know it can be a confusing and overwhelming topic, but I'm going to just begin right now and say pause and breathe. You give yourselves not enough credit for what you know. There are a lot of falsehoods. There's a lot of myths. There's elements of technology and scary criminal elements that make this a very tough conversation. As a parent, I completely understand. But one of the areas that we find people get really anxious about is the technology. And you do not parent devices and iPads and smartphones. You parent children and you parent teens. And where I'm going with that is the name of the game here is focusing on human behaviors that, number one, put us at risk. Number two, what are the behaviors of potentially dangerous people? How can we spot those? And if we can harden the target, ourselves and our children and our families, by making them aware of how to avoid risk altogether, be harder to find by the wrong people, and how to recognize behaviors like grooming that are designed to manipulate and exploit, it really doesn't matter what app or game we're on, that those will change and come and go. If we focus on the universal element, the objective, the mission, is making our families harder to target and more savvy out there. And that we can do as parents. If you're viewing this video, you care enough to take your time to do this, you already know what tricky behavior looks like, and we can already teach our children. Where there are a few differences, Janie, with online, we have opportunities that didn't exist prior to the technologies. One of the main ones, especially in this context, I'll point out, is cyber stalking. And there's, again, a lot of myths. People can't track you on your phone. If they can't just hack your phone and track. There's apps that we can use, but we have to willingly install those knowingly. and then add people. They can't be snuck in there unless somebody has access to our device. But there's a few tips I'll share right now. Unbeknownst to most people, when we post online, like on social media, it's possible for people to stalk us because there's tools out there that they can use to where they can look at a town like Trenton and they can see where posts were made right to the very street corner, home, the school, the office. And that is a really creepy thing. If I bring you down with something, Janie, I will bring you right back up with a fair and simple practical fix. It is really it is a creepy thing to think that someone could track our movements by doing posts. But the fix is actually rather fair and easy. So what I suggest to parents with that one, every device, I'm talking about phones and tablets, anything with GPS, you have location service settings. You well know them because they help you get to where you're driving without getting lost, right? Me too. I love my location services and I love the apps and the helpful things in my day-to-day life. And mine are on right now. But if I want to go and do a post about my day at work or about the family or anything, before I do so, I shut off my location services and then I post. And if you do that, you can't appear on those maps. The map's not your problem. If you forget, you can always delete it. I've done it and I've tested it. You delete them, turn off your location, delete the posts, redo them, and they're off the map in a minute or two. Those tools, it actually pulls them right out. So there's actually an undo button. If you're not sure of how to do that, great piece of advice here I share with all families. I call the coffee break Google. You know the feeling. If you have busy kids and careers, but you get 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there. You know what I mean, Janie? Right? Have a cup of coffee, grab your phone and Google it.
Okay.
Coffee break Google. Location.
Hey Google, how do I turn off location settings?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And you will get you'll get a screenshot at the top of those things going click here, here, here. 2 to 3 button clicks. I say Google it because you might have a Galaxy and I might have a Samsung or I have an iPhone. It could be a little bit of a difference in which menu, but it's 2 to 3 button clicks. And if you Google it, it's just 1, 2, 3 done. And then I go and I put them right back on. That fixes that whole problem. We should avoid tagging locations that we are. So if I go to Good Life Gym, I wouldn't tag Good Life Fitness Belleville. And the reason for that is it tells everyone where you are at that specific time, which we really don't want the whole world knowing. Also, if we're away from home and our kids are home without us, it tells bad guys that our kids might be at home alone. So even if we're not worried about our own security, we got to think of those around us. Even me, as you know, at my age, what if I'm loose about it, I might expose my loved ones. So I don't tag locations. Matt's at Good Life Gym. Plus, bad guys are able to go right into Instagram was an example. It's not hard. You can go in and search, and you search Good Life Fitness Belleville, for example, CFB Trenton. You can right in the app click Good Life Fitness, and the one that has the location icon, you click it, shows all the posts that people tagged in there from that location. Even if your account's private, I can see it.
Wow.
And unfortunately, the bad guys know this. They can pick a location where it's known to be women are there or young children, and they can see who is present and who is consistently there, and that gives them a pattern of life, and they can use that to stalk us. And from there, usually they can show up and try to organically meet us, make it look like a happy accident, look us up online and strike up a rapport, make us think we know them and forgot them. If they don't know where we are, none of that works. So I just don't tag my location. Another one on this, it's so easy though, isn't this? Just avoid tagging location, have at it, make your account private, know who's on it. Great. Foursquare, Matt Richardson checked into the Quinte Mall. Janie, do you care if I'm at the Quinte Mall?
I can't say that I do.
No, and I'm not offended. Janie's my friend. I don't care if Janie's at the mall either. I don't need to know it. Let's not annoy our audience and those people on our social media. That's a good reason of itself.
Right.
But another is it does reveal where we are at that exact moment in time. So the best advice is don't use those features. And the last one, this is really, as far as cyber stalking, the most human element. We're all guilty of it. when we say, hey, I'm looking forward to my jog tonight or my bike ride on the Bayshore Trail.
Mhm.
Okay, well, yeah, I think it's great. You're fit and you're active, and I love outdoors pictures. But rather than saying I'm looking forward to being there later tonight, wait until you're home, you're done your jog or your bike ride, and post some nice pictures. Here's the sunset. Here's the moonlight on the bay. I had a great jog. It's past tense, you're not there anymore. That's a much safer way. And actually, it creates better content too. The final one is, we do have to be, we have to scrutinize what we say in our posts, because little things can reveal a lot to people that are motivated to find us. So like an example, if there's certain types of trees in the background, they're kind of unique, or landmarks. Like in my home, I have a large oak tree, and one of my students saw it and said, hey, you live on this street. I went, yeah. My address wasn't in it. I thought it was fine. No, I recognize the tree. Or if you have a beautiful restored classic car that everyone marvels over, I know that I recognize that car from that driveway. So we have to be careful we have to really be careful on those types of things that we wouldn't think of. Remember, the predators are very motivated. And I'll pause and ask Janie if do we have any comments or questions further to that? That's a component on cyber stalking.
That my question, given that one of the hats that I wear is as the women's services coordinator, and that a lot of my caseload, a lot of the families that are supported through my role, are experiencing situations around family violence, whether that's issues of control, or in some circumstances where there is a risk of physical harm. And I'm wondering how that dynamic, where the potential for risk comes from a known person, how does that impact this core internet safety?
Well, great question. So everything I just mentioned applies still, but there are added elements, because people in our close circles have access to us, details about our lives, in our devices. So there's an added degree of caution required. If I found myself in a situation where I was trying to get away from a violent or potentially dangerous person or situation, and let's put it in the situation of a domestic, we've lived together, access to devices is present and current. If I'm leaving, first thing I'm going to do, if I can, is if you have the Find My iPhone thing, a lot of us do, I do. It saved me more than a few times. I love Find My iPhone. But if I'm fleeing, if I have access to the laptop, the computer where I have it, I'm going to remove my device from it, and I'm going to deny permission for that laptop on my actual device to Find My iPhone right away. I will shut off my location at that time too. And it's not the bad guy here, but the reason being, it is, if somebody has access to your device, it could happen where they add an app that does allow them to track our movements. These are actually family safety apps, but in the wrong hands, they can be sinister. So what I'm going to do, Janie, I'm going to remove the Find My iPhone off the device, and if not off of here, it will still get the job done. Shut off my location. When I get to a safe place and space, I'm going to go through my phone and see if there's any apps on it I don't recognize, or I might even do a factory reset, which would mean you have to re-add your apps, but safety first. For the inconvenience, it is a worthwhile exercise. A sign that something might be on there that you're not aware of, that's in the background hidden, if your phone is really slow and suffering from very poor performance,
Okay.
that's an indicator that there might be something running in the background that you can't see that's eating up the memory,
Okay.
as an indicator. I would recommend unplugging from social media 110% for a period, not forever. You can actually pause your profiles. So you can go into Facebook and not delete it, but you can unpublish it. To find out, go back to the coffee break, Google, it's not hard. How do I unpublish or hide my Facebook, my Instagram, my whatever I'm using? Do that, and I give yourself a week or two just to collect yourself, get back on good footing, get feeling safe and secure before you start to think of it. And I would not use the instant messaging on those. Your text messaging, okay, because you would pretty much have to have this physical device and frankly my face to get into the thing.
Okay.
But if the person you're fleeing has your passwords or in any way can breach your account, those private messages are not private for very long. And I wouldn't assume that you're using a great password and that they haven't figured it out or accessed it. If you leave your phone on, walk away, and they pick it up and your Facebook's on it, then go and look at your password and you never know.
Mhm.
So err on the side of caution on that. Communicating with people you trust. Use non-social media methods like your direct SMS text.
Okay. Yeah.
The other one I'll add to, um, with location, which again I love them, but in this specific context, mine's on, and I'm able on my iPhone, for example, to go through my menu and find my location history for the past 30 days, 90 days. And um, we might not want the risk of somebody being able to access that location, as remote as it might be, physical device only. It might be a good practice, especially if we are going to appointments or locations that we don't want known, to have it off for that period.
Okay, those are great tips. And I thank you for going through that. I think that's another Google question too, eh? Is, hey Google, how do I X, Y, and Z, or find this, or how do I turn this off? Um, are there devices other than phones that we should also be making these considerations on? I'm just aware of that. I have a smartwatch. I have wireless earphones that automatically connect to the Bluetooth in my car. How how do different kinds of electronics um, play into this? If someone's teenager has a game console, what other considerations should someone just have in the back of their mind when they're wanting to keep their location private?
So, like, some of them will have, that's a fantastic question. Some of them are going to have different risks and different risk levels. In a situation as acute as the period of fleeing a family violence situation, I take zero chances. The Bluetooth earphones are online. The gaming consoles are online. Your smart TVs. I still use them, but I am aware of the fact they're online. I exercise caution, but it's especially with anything that allows us to communicate or post or broadcast. So games are definitely in that, because you tell me one online game doesn't have chat and interactive features. My smart TV, I can't go and post anything. Like, I'm going to use my TV. But PS5s, Xboxes, all those game systems that are online, I wouldn't take them away from our family, our children, our teens, because they are a source of comfort, and that's a stressful situation. I would ensure that they understand what not to share and be monitoring what they're doing. You should be doing that anyway. So I recommend with families, the Bluetooth earphones, the smart TV. I think my fridge is online. I'm not worried about that so much. Those are exotic scenarios, but anything I can broadcast on or communicate with others. Where I'd be more concerned would be the gaming, for example, the chat features. Are you saying too much? Are you loose in the lips? Are you too trusting? The same way we look at social media, I look at gaming. So in my household, my son can game, and he has a social media account. But I actually let him do that in his room. He's 11, he's almost 12, but the door's open. I can hear everything. I can jump in anytime I want, see what he's doing. If I ask for the devices, I can look. And very importantly, I make sure they understand what it's okay to share and with whom, and what they shouldn't and with whom they should not. So again, Janie, back to that question of the behavior part, if we can get them thinking right, those in our families, ourselves too, then we're going to be safe across that spectrum of platforms, gaming, social apps, devices.
I think that's such a crucial point, because ultimately, if you have kind of a base level of safety planning around these kinds of issues, then if ever a situation arises where you need to tweak that and add extra security and add extra measures for safety for any reason, then you're in a better position to do so, because you already have that base understanding.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, I love what you just said there, and I guess like let's those of us that are my age, I didn't grow up with the internet, social media, thankfully.
Right.
It's hard enough coming of age, in the '90s and in the '80s. We have to be understanding the kids that are growing up, the teens, in an era where mistakes that would have lived and died in the '80s and '90s are now public record, permanent. Um, we have to be cognizant of that, and we have to think: are they really doing things we wouldn't have done?
Mhm.
We did silly things; it just wasn't online back then. Um, but to go back, sorry, if you think of it in a way we can all understand, like Janie, if I went to the mall back in 1989, or the Trenton Center movie theater, or a bus stop to a friend's house on foot, or a bike ride, do I need different safety rules for every location? Do I have to get maps of the route from the bus stop to the home? And no, I had to know things like never leave or go anywhere with anyone without checking first at home. And here's
Right.
2 quarters for the payphone. Remember those payphones, phone books?
Oh, I remember.
You could literally drop me off at the movie theater at 7 p.m., 9 p.m., or 3 in the afternoon, the mall or the arcade or whatever. But if I had those core universal safety tips, I was safeguarded across the spectrum. And that is the simplest, most effective way to get this done without getting dragged into feeling overwhelmed about having to master technologies. And because that's the red herring, it's a distraction. It takes our eye off the goal of protecting our kids.
I think that's really, really important. And so if we kind of segue back to that family violence theme that is quite relevant specifically to my role. Um, the majority of families that I serve that are experiencing those kinds of situations um, are are living it and are putting safeguards in place in that family dynamic. Are there any are there any extra tips and tricks that you might share with someone who is comfortable with their safety plan, is remaining with their partner for the time being, but might want to have some extra security around their home computer or tablet or shared devices?
Um, Another great question. We got to do this more often, my friend, is it's a very good point. Well, when we're in the home, and that's our choice. Okay. One of the things we really want to watch, most of us have Google accounts, for example. So my internet search history, which even in a healthy home, I don't necessarily want everyone to know, it's very personal. Um, be aware that, and I've seen it happen in my house. So I have my Google account. In the work I do, I have search histories and information I want only me to know. But I had
Sure.
given my son my old laptop just this past summer, and I went to help him look for something for school, and I saw some of my recent search history from a different machine on it.
Right.
And I went, oh, I can't believe I didn't think of that, Matt. Ugh. I assigned it to my account and I gave him his own. And if we are looking at things like counseling, domestic violence shelter locations, support services, in the whole, the whole spectrum of things we might need in terms of support, what we want to do is be sure that we are not leaving a history on our Google, a browser history, like in the browser, nor in the Google itself where it pre-populates like from your past searches. How can you do that? You can sign out of your Google account every time you use it, but I feel like a better way. There are privacy search engines that will give the average person everything they would ever need that Google would, however, with none of the data tracking.
Okay.
It's a privacy search engine. The one that I use, and I use it frequently, is called DuckDuckGo.com.
Okay.
And it saves nothing. So if I went on DuckDuckGo right now and left, and my wife came on and used DuckDuckGo, it doesn't record, it doesn't pre-populate your past searches, it doesn't keep a history. So if you're having anything you want, it could be about looking for support service, it could just be private and personal. DuckDuckGo.com, its very existence is for that very purpose. and myself and colleagues in my industry frequently trust it and use it. That would be probably the number one.
It's a great tip. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's a great question. And we got to look at this and go, okay. And I come from military families in generations past, but I grew up in Trenton and I've lived here my whole life. I had a lot of friends, obviously in the community, that had to travel, they were reposted. And and they know that's not easy. You make so many sacrifices for Canadians and way beyond our borders, frankly. Um, we have to actually pause and step back and go, how would I feel if I was moving? And the internet is a blessing because Skype and Zoom and FaceTime and other related tools allow us to actually stay much more deeply connected than ever. I have family around the world that are actually a part of my family circle. We do Zoom calls. They know what my kids look like when they open their birthday presents they mailed from Australia. That's a beautiful thing. So we don't want to take everything away and yank that away from them. That's hard enough, but then when you throw in a situation of domestic violence and the stresses and traumas, it is a great support mechanism. At the same time, it exposes us to vulnerabilities. And Janie, you and I know, and I'm going to say it, vulnerabilities aren't weaknesses. I have vulnerabilities, as do you, Janie, as do each. We all have them. It's a human condition thing.
Absolutely.
But if they start to become apparent online, they get used against us. So we have to be careful, not just the kids, us too. I'll give you a scenario and just put yourself in their shoes. A colleague of mine hadn't dated, for example, in something like 20 some odd years, had married her high school sweetheart, professional, smart lady, couple young kids. And it went south fast, not in a great way. She was vulnerable, lonely, isolated, terrified, a lot of stuff going on. And she found that she was being groomed online by two different guys from dating websites and didn't see it. And I asked her because she felt really bad. And I said, why do you feel bad? You didn't do anything wrong. You're not the bad guy. That's on them. She goes, like, I didn't see it. And I said, well, what happened? And I could see this. Well, I felt unattractive. They told me I was attractive. I felt stupid. They told me I'm smart. I was scared. They comforted me. I needed to talk. They were always there every time I ever needed anything. Always there. How was your day? I'd message them 2 seconds later. They're always right there. And it felt good. And I didn't want to think for a minute it wasn't real because it made me feel good for the first time in a long time. We can all relate with that. We've all been lonely. We all.
As you're giving that example, I'm feeling this incredible compassion and empathy for all of our youth who are drawn to these quickly deep connections that can form online. And I know that that's something that you're likely to touch specifically upon in the other recording for the youth specific presentation that you're going to be doing. But I think that it's such a great example of how those vulnerabilities exist regardless of who we are, what stage in our lives we're at. And if there's someone that is eager to exploit them, then the internet gives them a lot of opportunity to do so.
Oh, absolutely, Janie. It's easier than ever. There's more opportunity because there's like 4 billion people online. People tend to share very openly online. So they have more access with more opportunity with less risk. The internet offers some degree of anonymity and it's easier. So they could be manipulating, I've seen 50, 60 or more people at a time. And you're right. This is not a thing about teenagers or adolescents or men or women. We are all susceptible because we're all human beings and we all have the same needs, love and affection. Who doesn't want to be loved?
And it's so nice to hear you also reflect on the unique circumstances of military families, the impacts of relocation, the impacts of and challenges that accompany all of those transitions, absences during deployment and courses, regardless of frequency. It's really nice to hear you have a recognition of that as well, as you speak specifically to our community. Along those lines, I'm wondering, as another big transition is starting, as the pandemic is kind of entering, I don't know, I'm going to be optimistic and say kind of a new phase as we hopefully come out the other side of things a little bit. I probably just jinxed us all, apologies. But as society kind of reopens up, as people kind of venture out a little bit more again, are there any particular internet safety tips that you think would be significant as we make this transition back to whatever this new normal is going to be, as we venture out of our homes a little more again?
Another great question. I've given that one some thought, and it required actually deep thinking, focused thought. The obvious one goes back to location, and if we're going places like physically too, that's why we watch our location. But I think the deeper one, excuse me, we've been 2 years into this situation with the pandemic, and there will be other emergencies where we're thrust out back in a remote situation. So this is a universal truth. 2 years online, we have changed our thinking. We've dropped our guard a bit because there's a false sense of security behind these screens.
Right.
Our instincts have become duller. I notice it myself. I'm not as socially sharp as I was. I'm sure I'll get back, but I've changed a bit, and so have you. So things that would have been inherently red flags for you back before the pandemic, when we were accustomed to being in the public and at different locations with different people on a regular basis. Janie, I'm sure you've been in a situation where somebody's given you a bad vibe. The butterflies, they stare, they follow too close, they stand too close, they smile in a weird way at weird times. We've all had the instincts or the butterflies for that. Online, it's a very different world. So I would say have our guard up a bit, speaking from personal experience, because those instincts to tricky behavior, either sinister behavior or people that are just trying to manipulate us, have been dulled. So we have to actually work a little harder in that bridge period, us, our kids, our teens, ourselves, because after that long on screens, it has dulled those things. So what that tells me is instincts are inherent and they're natural, they'll come back. But we have to be better thinkers, like cognitive. The horsepower will be up here, because behaviors that 3 years ago would have given you, that vibe may not trigger them now. So we have to be a little more on guard in our everyday lives. And I don't mean paranoid, but I mean really thinking critically about men, women, people, situations that might pose a risk in ways that we used to take for granted. We now have to do the heavy lifting for ourselves.
I think that that's such a fantastic point, and that allowing ourselves to view it as critical thinking rather than paranoia. What a wonderful opportunity as things open back up and as we reopen our lives, to really consider who we're going to welcome into them and what role we're going to allow for them to play, and also to remember and to teach our children to be cognizant of those gut instincts and to not dismiss them as simply awkwardness at not having been in that kind of situation in a while. That's a really excellent point you've touched upon.
That's an excellent point on your end too. Do remind them about their instincts, and we do have to explain to them, because our instincts will say something's not right when sometimes we can't cognitively go, oh, I feel bad, they're not doing anything wrong, they're just nice.
Mm-hmm.
Or the car that's parked there and the guy's sitting in the front seat with a puppy dog near a school. He's probably just a lonely old man driving his dog around. Well, wait a minute, why is it tripping my wire? And we don't have to know why, but we have to trust and believe. Those instincts are gifts from God. Like, they're there to help us. And the bad guys know that we will try to explain them in a way, like, because we're nice people.
Mm-hmm.
We can't think like them. So we can't actually go, wait, they might have bad intentions. And they count on that. They know that we're going to discount them. I've even seen them say, there's no other species in the world that would aid its demise in the way humans do. Like a gazelle in the Sahara Desert won't stop to see if the lion's okay if it trips. Right. And going back to what you're saying there, is we can't feel guilty at all, not one iota, about doing what's right for us and our families. It's safety first, and
Well,
it is.
and for our community members who are single and might be excited to re-enter the dating world, for our community members who are youth, who are just starting that aspect of their lives, it's a really, really good opportunity to remind ourselves to hone in on those instincts. And there's really no downside to giving yourself that time to adjust to the new normal as we you know as we experience more in-person encounters in the coming weeks and months.
Exactly, Jeannie, well said. And just jumping right off of there. Yeah, we're jumping in with both feet because we're excited to go back to normal. I am too. Um, Dating again, we all need that in our lives, and it can be an exciting time. First time in a long time. It's new. I'm nervous, but it's really exciting. We all know what the honeymoon period feels like. When you have that love, and for 6 months, it's just you're blind. You're sensory blind because you're in love, and that man or woman or whoever, they can do no wrong. This is, however, Janie, very, very relevant in a situation for whatever reason we might be introducing a new partner in our life, a new person in general, but a new partner is especially true. Could be a close family friend. Um, this is not to say not to date or make new friends at all, but it is a risk, like a high risk period when we have families and children, or if we're single, bringing a new person that's close romantically or even platonically into our circle. It is okay to take your sweet time. It's okay to take several months to bring them to your home, several more months to meet your children. You know what's right for you and your family. Don't feel bad. You're just being smart and prudent. And if some people say, I felt great after 3 weeks, great. Some other people might say it took a few months for I really had a good read. Trust yourself. You're not making the bad decision. You're doing what's right for you and your family because you love and care. Good for you. It's okay.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think it's a great opportunity for me to just also drop out to anyone who's taking the time to watch this video. Thank you. But also some other things that you guys can always have access to are tip sheets that we have available on, what do healthy relationships look like. One great one that kept coming to mind when you were giving those examples is the healthy relationships continuum. If something doesn't quite feel right, there's nothing wrong with having a look at that and saying, where does this behavior actually fall on this? And you might be surprised to see that there are more check marks in some of the more toxic columns than you would have thought. And so it's one more example of critical thinking that we can all put to use.
I'm going to actually say, Janie, by the way, it's a wonderful resource. I've seen it myself. To go back to the am I paranoid or being too critical, that's not it. And if you look at the resource Janie's explaining, one thing with what I do, with the work I do, the crimes I look into are not easy. They are complex. There's very seldom a smoking gun. But when you look at the document Janie's describing, there is tick boxes. And if there's 1 or 2 out of 10, you go, no big deal, or bad hair day. But if you start hitting 5, 6, or 7, or 8 out of 10 or 12, the more of those are there, Janie, and especially in the acute or more severe egregious columns, the more you should say, something is rotten in Denmark here. There is a lot of smoke. So that's actually a fantastic document because it takes some of that subjectivity out of the equation. And I think that's actually, I highly recommend that resource. I know I learned from it myself too. And I think that would actually be, I would highly recommend that you follow suit and do so as well. Oh, Jeannie, one last thing. I know we're getting close to the end of our time. I always say trust but verify. So if I'm going to have a babysitter come, or a contractor, right, or a business partner, you name it, especially a romantic partner, I am going to Google and look them up on social media and see if Matt Richardson is Matt Richardson. Is there anything online about him at all? If you've ever had a social media account, if you've ever even went to post-secondary school, there is stuff. If you've played a sport, there's always something. It might only be a little bit, but I would ensure they take the steps to ensure that person is who they claim to be. They aren't a phantom. And also, on another end, I've seen people go, yeah, actually, he's Matt Richardson in Trenton, but he has 5 other dating profiles with different cities. So he's dating a lot of women or men or whatever. Make sure that you do a quick verification. That would be another topic another day. But for today's purposes, Google, coffee break Google, their name, their city. If they work at Procter and Gamble, do some searches, check social media. And if you're not seeing anything at all or it's not lining up, that's 2 strikes in one shot, in my opinion.
That is another great tip. Thank you so much, Matt. We should do this more often. This is every time I talk to you, I learn something new, and I feel like both of us could spend a whole lot longer discussing these important issues.
Well, Janie, thank you very much for having me. It would be a pleasure to work with you some more anytime, and always a pleasure to support in my little way that I'm able our military community. I just want to say thank you to our men and women in uniform. Um, I sincerely mean it in the most sincere fashion, how much I value and appreciate what you do and the sacrifices you make. And I'm just honored to be able to support you and your amazing
The
family.
feeling is very mutual. We would love to work with you again, and on behalf of the military community, of the serving members and all of the families, I'm sure that a lot will be learned through this recording. So thank you so much again.
And thank you, Janie.